My guest on this week's Evolve to Succeed podcast is Matt Fleming. Some of you would have heard and known of Matt from his days as Aylesworth Fleming PR. But he's developed a business and a group called the Emerge Group, sold that business, and is now part of AF Oliver. He's got a great story about growth, of niching, and overcoming adversity, as we'll hear during the course of this conversation. I hope you enjoy the episode. Welcome, Matt, to the Evolve to Succeed podcast.
Thank you. Long time since I've seen you, Warren, so it's lovely to be here.
Yeah, it's good to reacquaint with you. I'm supposed to be a little bit intrigued here about your start in life and the background. Also, we all know you as sort of co-founding Aylesworth Fleming, and we're going to talk about that story. But what got you into that world of PR, media?
Complete accident. I actually sold a van to an advertising agency, believe it or not.
Okay.
And it's a great story, actually. And I delivered this van. It was a horrible, wet, dark Wednesday afternoon in December. And I'm just now trying to remember the year. It'll come to me in a moment or two. And I delivered this van, Young Advertising, on Richmond Hill. And they bought this van to deliver print.
And were you in car sales at that time?
Yeah, I sold commercial vehicle sales.
Oh,
yeah.
okay.
Yeah, I used to sell lorries. I moved down from London. When I'm talking to people about my career in advertising, I say I moved down to London in 1978. What I don't tell them is that I was a truck salesman that moved down from London. I let them all think that I'd never lie about it, but I let them all think that I worked for some great London agency. But actually, I sold lorries, and the job for the truck sales manager came up down here in Bournemouth at Hartwell. And I was only a 21-year-old, so very young. Didn't even have an HGV license in those days, which was very difficult when an irate client one day brought his lorry back and said, look, if you think that's acceptable, drive it down the road. And I had to say, well, I can't, I haven't got a license.
I can't do that.
You can imagine, can't you? I did take my license. I did pass my HGV one eventually. But I delivered this van on Wednesday afternoon, horrid Wednesday afternoon, just prior to Christmas, wet, drizzly, awful, with the driver. And we took it up there and we walked into Walton House, which is an extraordinary building that sits just underneath the big nationwide building on
like
Richmond
a
Hill.
mansion house, isn't it?
It used to belong to Mr. W.H. Smith of W.H. Smith. I think it was his Bournemouth holiday home years and years ago. Wow. It's a listed building, fabulous building. And I walked in there and it was suitably impressive. It looked at every inch an advertising agency, stone quarry floor, great big leather Chesterfield, this sweeping staircase, oak staircase that went up and into the distance. Not a soul in sight. Okay, so I sort of waited about for a minute or two and then I think, I really need to get something sorted. Now, there was a great big pair of double doors off of reception in this agency. And so I thought, I'll go tap on the door. So I could hear vague noises So I went to rap my knuckles on the door. And I don't know whether you've ever banged on a door that is so thick and is so dense that when you hit it, not only does it really hurt, but it actually makes no sound whatsoever. Everything gets absorbed. So I opened the door up and there's a party going on. They've just won, Young Advertising, I think it was the Hermitite account. The people that make the liquid gaskets.
Yes.
You're probably too young to remember.
Okay.
But back in the day, you used to have cylinder heads that used to buckle all the time. You could buy this liquid gasket gunk stuff called Hermitite. So they're a big account.
Yeah.
And the guy who'd bought the van spotted me from the other side of the room and said, come and join the party. Well, you wouldn't. I was 21, for goodness sake. Why wouldn't you do that? So I sent the driver back off. And after a hair-raising test drive, which had another member of staff in the back of that van with an open bottle of champagne, nothing to hang on to in the back of that van. It was just a metal van. Still a friend of mine to this day, by the way, this particular person. So that's a long time ago, 40 years ago.
Wow.
Well, that was it. And I stayed for the party, left at 3 a.m. They basically said to me, give me a ring in the morning and you'll be sober in the morning, we'll see.
Yeah.
And a couple of days later, I got the call saying, come in and have a chat to us. I took a substantial salary cut.
Okay.
I was on commission selling lorries and I took a substantial backward step to go and work in the advertising business as a trainee account exec.
Wow.
And I joined Young, I think, in 1980, 81 maybe,
okay,
80, 81, that sort of time. I hate the cliche, but the rest, as they say,
it's history. And we'll go over some of that history. But by 1985, so only 4 years further on, you co-founded Aylesworth Fleming.
Yeah, I got.
How did that all come about?
Well, I got the taste of it all, and I had an extraordinary overconfidence, a self-belief that belied my lack of knowledge or experience.
As many of us do when we're young.
Oh, heavens. But so, you always think you could do things better, don't you? And the rate of progress wasn't quick enough. I was asked by a couple of guys if I wanted to join with them in starting an agency, which I did. Agency called Partners in Advertising. Very short-lived, unfortunately. But the three of us started this agency together, and that didn't go as planned. And again, ego came to the surface.
And that was even before Aylesworth Fleming.
Yeah, absolutely. Wow. So I wasn't really that long at Young, and long enough to build some great relationships, but only there sort of, they put me in Walton House Advertising, which was like the small business offshoot of Young Advertising. I wasn't quite experienced enough to work on the big accounts. I was sort of given like the local shops and this sort of stuff to work on. Great place to cut your teeth because every penny counts. And you're dealing with small SMEs and stuff. Every budget penny counts, every media pound counts, and so you learn some really good hygiene. Dealing at that level. When I did the Partners thing, which was very short-lived, and the guy whose idea it was to start Partners had the ear of the investors and had me out very quickly. So with the tiny settlement, and it was I look back on it in today's terms, and it was a tiny sum of money. I think it was from memory, I might get this wrong, it was like £1,000 or something. They're paying me off. And with that, I put that, it was my... No, £4,000, and that was my share.
That was your stake.
To buy, my 40% of Aylesworth Fleming, as it was back then, and 40% with the Martin Aylesworth Stevenson, still a mate of mine to this day, and back local again now, back from the States, and two investors who put in £1,000 each.
And that was it.
10 grand, and away we went.
And when you look back now, do you think you're always destined to run your own business?
Yes. Yeah. I was an awful employee. I was incredibly difficult as an employee, and that self-confidence is a good thing up to a point, but every business needs people who are actually happy in their role and recognize their strengths and weaknesses probably better than I did, and are happy. I can think of some fantastic people inside. It's not Aylesworth Fleming anymore, it's AF Oliver these days, but some wonderful people inside AF Oliver, and you think they do a brilliant job, and they don't want to be promoted outside of their excellence, their level of excellence. Sometimes I think we do that too much. But the answer to your question is, I was just so difficult to be an employee.
And so determined and so focused and so
it was going to be
And obviously
some people might call it a pain in the arse, actually, to be fair. I think back to some of my
being kind, obviously.
Thank you, Warren. That is kind. But I think back to some of my earlier employers, and I think, they'd probably have a different take on that.
Definitely. And did you always have the niche of residential housing developers? Or how did that niche come about?
No. I kicked off, really. Hotels was going to be... I decided early doors we were going to have a specialisation. And I think that's a big message for businesses that are actually growing up without a huge chunk of investment at the start, without a bunch of experienced people at the start, probably in areas outside of capital cities and this sort of thing. So you are essentially you're starting off with all of the attributes of something that's an SME. And I know a lot of businesses and agencies in particular that have been very happy to be SMEs all their duration and have earned their founders a really good living and lots of happiness. You don't have to be the world's biggest or best, but I always wanted to grow the business, and I realized really quickly that you were never going to grow the business to any scale in Bournemouth unless you did something better than everybody else.
There had to be
a USP. Again, I know USP these days is a bit of a cliche, but you had to have a unique selling proposition. And if you didn't, you weren't going to go and pick up big pieces of business.
And I'm really interested to kind of explore that. So you started with hotels.
Yeah, because a great mate of mine was Derek Silk out at the Dormy Hotel in Ferndale.
Okay.
And I met Derek Silk. I sold him If he ever watches
sold
this,
him a van.
I did. I sold him a minibus. I did. He's never forgiven me. We're still friends to this day. I was with him last Friday.
Yeah.
And 40 odd years later, we're still good friends. And he's forgiven me, I think, for the minibus that I sold at the Dormy Hotel. But so, of course, he was an intro into De Vere Hotels back in the day. He was GM at the Dormy out at Ferndown. So we got to De Vere, did a fair bit of De Vere Hotel stuff. And my mentor, guy, unfortunately no longer with us, a guy called Peter Burrows, was really good in the hotel and leisure advertising sector. Yeah. So that was going to be it. And then we started doing business with an estate agency right here, like a few yards from where we are, Black Horse Agencies, just down the road opposite the town hall, the civic offices. Yeah. And so having done that, I really loved the property thing. I got into it really quickly, and I looked at what was being done elsewhere in and around the industry on the new homes front, on the estate agency front, and I thought, this isn't very good. This could be a lot better than this. And there it was. And then there we picked up one fairly chunky account, a company called Clark Homes, since been acquired, and that their acquirers have been acquired, and those acquire, down the line. But from there, that was it. Once we were into Clark, and that started to grow, and then we became specialists. And as soon as you're a specialist, all bets are off. You can go anywhere. You can walk into any boardroom at that point. Yeah,
because you have that credibility, that integrity, all of those kind of things. So one of the things that possibly people, that are starting a business or are in a business and are thinking we should be niching, one of the things is, how do you get traction in a niche? You obviously did it in the hotel sector, but then have done it spectacularly well in the residential home sector. Any hints and tips on how you break into a niche?
You are marching me into cliche city, aren't you? And I
please don't do that.
I just can't think of anything better to say. Fake it till you make it. And so you need to know what you're doing. Yeah. So you've got to learn, you've got to read, you've got to be aware. And certainly if you want to do stuff big style, bullshit doesn't cut it. No. You have to know. You only
get so far with bullshit. Battles brains.
Absolutely. Certainly not in any large organisation, or an organisation where they have specialists, marketing specialists, sales specialists. So you have to have that basic knowledge there. But in terms of your experience and your capabilities, and one of my favorite expressions, you win a huge piece of account. The first multi-million, 7-figure account we won was Carla Homes. Still a client of AF Oliver today. Unbelievably so. We, with a little bit of a hiatus where the creative went somewhere, but we kept the media business. But Carla is still a client of AF Oliver today, and we won the Carla business back in 1987. So what's that? That's 38 years ago. It is. Still a client today. That's not bad, is it?
That's brilliant.
But I remember getting the call and saying, "Come and talk to us." We pitched. And going to the meeting and them saying, we've decided to appoint you, and me being over the moon. No car phones in those days. So, you drive to a phone box and you ring and you say, guess what, I remember somebody saying to me, well, how on earth are you going to manage that? Yeah. It's huge. How are you going to manage that? I'm going to worry about that on Monday. It's Friday. I'm
going to celebrate now.
I'm going to enjoy the weekend. The fake it to make it thing is okay. It is a cliche. But you have to have a confidence and a self-composure that you can walk in.
But you've also said you've got to go and gain the knowledge, haven't you? You've got to put in the hard yards.
Absolutely.
I suppose you've got to go and find out who's the movers and shakers in an industry. Get to know them, all of those.
The thing is, Warren, if you don't have that, even if you win it, you won't keep it.
Yeah.
So, one of our big selling points all down the years has always been, look at how long we keep our clients for. Yeah. And in 9 cases out of 10 where we lose clients, it's not because they don't like us anymore, it's because they've been acquired by somebody else.
Okay.
And those people, the acquirer, will always have the upper hand.
So there's an interesting thing coming on here, and I'm going to go off script from where I was going to go a little bit. If you talked about, Derek Silk, that relationship still. You talked about, the original employer for you that brought you into the PR industry. You're talking about clients for 38 years. Relationships are something that's really important to you.
Massive.
That must be one of your kind of core values.
Massive. like all of us, I have the intention. I'm going to write a book about how to build an agency, how to build a business, really.
Yeah.
With 10 rules. And one of those, and I still haven't sorted out the order they're in because, like everyone else, this book that I'm writing has already been underway for 3 years, and I think I'm 2 pages in.
But it's up here.
Somewhere in that mess, but somewhere right at the top of the list is relationships, but so much of that is interdependent on other things that you do in the way you run your business. For me, the key things, quite aside from talent and spotting an opportunity and all the other things. The characteristics that you can't learn that come sat within you that are really important, and honesty and loyalty, trustworthy, do what you say you're going to do, all of those sort of things. Yeah. But also, one of the big ones for me has always been be fun to work with. And if you tend to build relationships.
Yeah. Because people gyrate towards you still, don't they? They come back.
Nothing worse, is there, than you've got a supplier come and see you and think, oh my God, okay. All right then.
Not again.
Yeah, I tell you what, give me an hour and then come in and tell me so-and-so's just arrived, Yeah. And so that's the last thing in the world you want to be. You want people to look forward to you getting into a meeting.
So I'm intrigued now because obviously built a professional services firm, but built it to 40 people. But and I'm very big on relationships, relationships.
That's something you've done really well in your career. Yeah.
Thank you. But one of the things you always struggle with is how do you, if that's your core value and you're good at building relationships, how do you get your team to be good at building relationships? So the business, and you've done this very successfully, the business isn't you, the business is that team of 100 people.
Well, the key first thing, of course, is a really obvious one, and that is you build a relationship with them, don't you?
Yeah.
And there's no better way to demonstrate what you think important than your behaviour with them.
Yeah.
And there's nothing worse, is there, than people that look like nice people on the surface, but actually when you get back in the car and they're driving back to the office, they're awful.
Yeah.
I mean, I've always had this thing, again, another cliche. Never trust anyone that's nasty to waiters.
Yeah.
So if you're out with someone and they're smiling at you and telling you what a nice guy you are and all the rest of it, and then they're rude to the waiter or waitress or person, and you think that is just unacceptable, then, don't you? That for me, then,
I'm with you. You genuine.
Got it marked down.
Yeah.
I mean, you can be unhappy with service and all that sort of stuff, of course, but just being rude to people, I find that. So the answer to your question is
you and your team.
demonstrate, and let people know the importance of it, obviously, and it's bring energy as well. People love energy. There's a guy, I can't remember who it is. I can't claim it for my own. I wish I could. But there's the guy, I think he's the CEO of Microsoft. And he has this thing about 2 types of people in meetings. You can either be a zapper.
Yeah.
You zap a meeting with energy. You bring it all to life. Or a sapper. You sap energy. You suck the energy out of a room. And for me, that was brilliant. I think that's
zappers
so
zappers,
true.
like that.
And we've all sat in meetings, haven't we? And you've all thought, you are sucking the energy out of this room. And so I've always said to my lot, don't ever be a sapper, always be a zapper. And go to every meeting with a great idea. Yeah. Don't ever go. If you're in the creative business, or for me,
I think it's any
services business.
Any services business, you're there because of your expertise, but
take
you're there
something
to give
new.
ideas.
Take something new to the meeting. Go there and take something there and have people go, oh my goodness.
Yeah.
And they'll look forward to you coming next time. It's and that carries on for years and years and years if you do it right.
Definitely. And so you 33 years. We'll talk about kind of the exit process that you went through. Aylesworth Fleming came part of the Emerge group. You had over 100 team members. I mean, this is quite a big question, I suppose. But when you look back on those 33 years, is there a spell that you would say was your happiest period of being in business?
Yeah, definitely. And that's quite an easy one to spot as well. I think the period from 2000 to 2007.
Okay.
It's no coincidence that actually coincides with a really great period in the economy, obviously, and for house building. Was undoubtedly my favourite period. And then the worst period, undoubtedly, 2008 and 2009. I think, our group, when we decided to emerge and create the individual standalone business, Space and Time, and Think and Juice and Aylesworth Fleming and so on, we were 250 staff.
Wow.
at that point. So it was 60 million turnover, the group. At the time, I decided it was a moment. It was a shower moment in 2015.
Why was that?
A lot of reasons. I think I made one or two poor decisions about the form of the business and the people in it. And I think that it disrupted a harmony that I hadn't quite realised was there and how important that it was. And probably 18 months in, 2 years into having made that decision, or not made it, because me and my business partner, Peter Jones, not big tall Peter Jones, but Peter Jones, my Peter Jones, if you like. Yeah. We're still great mates, by the way. So me and my business partner and I, we used to make all of our decisions jointly. I remember once in a fit of peak, we were, I forget where we were, both in the back of a car. And I had a huge row with Mercedes at Southampton. I was absolutely furious. I felt that we'd been completely turned over. And I said to Peter, I said, that's it. We're never buying another bloody Mercedes in this company. He said, mate, we are. He said, I love Mercedes. Yeah. Why? And of course, sometimes you have to do that sense check. And we had a great relationship, but I think we disturbed that, and I wasn't happy.
Okay.
And I always said that when I stopped looking forward to going into the office, I was going to stop going into the office. And it was a moment. And I remember ringing Peter on the way in that morning, 2015. I remember it ever so well. I remember getting out the shower. I remember making the decision in the shower. And I remember ringing Peter on the way into the office and saying, mate, I'm going to sell.
Okay.
And at that time, I owned 2/3 of the equity in the group. So it meant that, that it would force us to do something. It was a straightforward thing to do something.
I mean, that, having recently sold Inspire and been through that much journey yourself, you sometimes look back and I think, we sold to the right entity and we did the right thing. And I'd got to the point where the business needed new energy, new expertise, resource, technology was coming. I had my reasons. Do you look back and with any regret? So I think I look back with no regret. Do you look back with any regret?
The actual process and the people that we sold the businesses to, not at all. Space and Time Media, which was the biggest in terms of turnover and profitability in the group, has gone on to be a fantastic success as a management buyout.
Okay.
Now, the process of management buyout of your partner is a very tricky one. Friendships get pulled and tested to the very limit there. But we came through all that, and that business has gone from strength to strength. I'm absolutely delighted. There was a management buyout of our PR business in Birmingham, Whistle PR, great business, and they're still trading very successfully. We sold Aylesworth Fleming to Oliver Group. Oliver Group are a magnificent organisation, now part of Brandtech, huge business, one of the fastest growing agency groups on the planet, and lovely people to work with. And bearing in mind that we agreed our terms with Oliver in late 2015, and here we are in 2024, and I'm still working for him. So
we're going to come back to that.
Yeah.
We're definitely going to come back to that.
And Thinking Juice, we eventually sold to 11 Miles. 11 Miles is a fantastic business. Tony, I'd like to think he would think of himself as a friend of mine, but what a great guy to do business with, and what a fantastic group. We talk about doing business in London and what have you when you're in the provinces. Crikey, they've got some fantastic clients. They do some great work, with companies like Vertical Leap and Thinking Juice, of course. And, there's Sideshow, and it's the Sideshow group, effectively.
Most business owners go through a period of, that's fraught, that makes you extremely tired. You start to question yourself. And, it's a very highly stressed, pressurized environment when you sell a business.
Yeah.
You went through a process in a very short period of 2 to 3 years of selling 4, 5 businesses. Yeah. Why did you do it that way and not just say, right,
it was horrendous. It was an absolute nightmare. I look back on those 2 years really, 18 months. I look back on those 2 years and think, my word, it was just truly awful.
Okay.
We took advice, obviously, but by that time, 250 people, 60 million turnover. We are quite we're not big group, but we're quite a substantial group. And certainly in terms of rankings,
in terms of the creative sector,
inside the top 100 in the UK. So we were quite a chunky business, and we thought, at least I thought, that it was going to be quite a simple matter of going to the market and saying, look at us, look, here's our growth, here's our profitability, or all the indicators are good. But we were advised by specialists, good advice in the end as well, that said you are too unwieldy as a group of that size. If you were a creative shop with 250 people, 60 million turnover, etc., you would be like as valuable as a Fabergé egg. If you were a media business that size, you would be, PR business. But you're a bit of this and you're a bit of that and a bit of this, and any organisation is going to struggle at your size to give you full value and fit you into their organisation. And if you want to realise the old classic phrase of the sum of the parts is greater than the whole, in this case it was the opposite, and in fact, the whole would be downvalued because of the parts of the organisation that were of lower value to a potential trade sale acquirer. And so it's good advice. We sort of took a second opinion as well, and same advice. And it became clear that to get best value, we had to break this up.
And did that
was
really
that
difficult. A little bit, I was going to say, is that
Awful.
a little bit of you that was hurting inside when you did
awful,
that?
Awful.
Because it's been your baby, 33 years, 2/3 of the equity, and now you're going to break it up.
It was tough. It was absolutely tough. But like I say, it's like all these things, there was a really good and rational reason for doing it. So that was always good. Great support from wife, family at home, who would remind me on a regular basis, how good it is and how good it's been, how good it's going to be, and doing it for all the right reasons. And so, there's been tough times before. I think 2008, 2009 was still the toughest time.
I was going to talk to you about that because I think, the great niche that you had, like you said, led you to this kind of, magical 7 years to 2007. But when you have a business with a niche, you rock and roll with that niche,
the market,
don't you?
Unfortunately, you do.
You ebb and flow with that, and you clearly did. And I mean, how were you able to react as an owner of a business, as a leader of a business, when we'll talk about 2008, when that crash comes and all of your clients, or 80% of your clients, are suffering? What do you do? How do you lead a business through those kind of times?
Really difficult. Incredibly difficult. I think in all the years that I've been running the business, running any business, it's the first time I actually physically cried during that time with the emotional stress of it was so great. Making people redundant. During our phase of redundancies, where the first one, you sort of think, oh, well, actually, that was easier than I thought. And there were one or two people there that were possibly out past their sell-by date and, all this sort of thing. And then that doesn't stop. And so then there's a second round. And now these are good people that matter to you and you care about. And then there's a third round. And these are people you think, I'm never going to get the sort of quality of this individual back in the organisation again. And that's just terrible. That's really tough. And of course, not only that, I mean, by that time, financially, we were much more solid. For me personally, my greatest stress was more 1990. Because in 1990, the business was only 5 years old. And I hadn't really learned how things work. I was learning on the job every day. So it was worse in 1990. And now, way back in 1990, the business was only 5 years old, and I was genuinely still wet behind the ears and learning on the job as I was going along. And we were beholden to the banks and stuff back in 1990. We had two huge bad debts. So January the 1st,
Happy
1990.
New Year.
It might not have been it wasn't the first. It was the first working day. Whatever the first working day was in 1990, I think it might have been a Wednesday. Can't remember. It doesn't matter. But I'm sat at my desk and I had a computer, like one of those green screen computers, and it was so big I couldn't actually fit it on my desk. My desk was here.
It had its own desk, did it?
Here. So I used to turn around to do stuff on this computer with my back to the door, and I'm on a deadline. someone's come to the door and tap, tap, tap on my open door.
Yeah.
And I said, I'm on a deadline at the moment. Can this wait? No, it can't wait. I said, look, I'm really under pressure. It better be good. And they said, oh, yeah, this is really good. So I've turned around and take the glasses off theatrically and fling them on the desk. And I said, go on then. Grove Personnel's gone bust. So, so our biggest client at the time, or our second biggest client at the time, had gone bust over Christmas.
Wow.
Had spent a fortune on media,
which you were now having to foot the bill for.
All the trade press that was all going to come out in January, thousands of pounds back in 1990, and all uninsured in those days, because of course you didn't know about that stuff then, did you? And the margins on media are tiny, just a few percentage points. A big spend, small margin, all gone. That was bad. So that rocked us. And then we had Leading Leisure as a major client in 1990. And they came to us because of our property expertise, because they started building houses along with doing everything else and owning hotels and all the other stuff that they did. And bit by bit, they kept bringing more stuff to us. And in the end, we're by far and away our biggest client. And they went bust in the November. It might be a bit too early for you to remember, but they owed, I think, Southern newspapers about 16 million at the time. I don't know about owed, but Southern newspapers had 16 million invested in them. But it cost us 120 grand when they went bust.
A very quick break from this week's episode, which I hope you're enjoying. If you are enjoying, please remember, do help us and help yourself to make sure you don't miss an episode by subscribing and reviewing the episode. So that's it. Short interlude from me. Let's get back to the conversation.
1990.
Yeah, 120,000, 1990.
Yeah, we were bust.
5 years into the business. How do you pick yourself up?
We were absolutely. And I remember.
Did you go bust?
No, we didn't. No, I'm hugely proud.
I was going to say it must be one of your proudest achievements.
I remember going for a beer with my lawyer. He's long since retired. A guy called Jim Merritt. Brilliant guy. He used to be, in those days, Rawlins, Davy and Wells, which is what the firm was called back in those days. I had a client who used Jim. He was a character. Great guy, and still is, by the way. Having a beer with him tomorrow night, as it happens. And we went for a beer in the pub next to Tuctonia. Is it the Golfers Arms it was called or something?
Don't know.
I can't remember. Anyway, so I've said, that's it. I'm done for. Uninsured, I can't. I'm bust. No equity in the house. Because, of course, I remortgaged right at the top to buy the house. I bought my partner out, Marty, the Aylesworth, for £1 when Grove went bust and we were looking rocky. So I said, look, either you run it or I'll run it. Yeah. And now I'm happy to sell my bit to you for £1 and you run it, or you sell yours to me for £1. But one of us is going to. So he went back off to the States and I carried on. And then, of course, Leading Leisure went bust, and I said, well, that's it, I can't do it. And it's just, first thing you need to do is calm down.
Yeah, take a breath.
We've got a rule in our family that says that if you want someone to calm down, the very worst thing you can say to them is calm down. And I said, oh, that's it. I've been offered a job up in London. I'll shut it all down and I'm going to go. And unfortunately, by the time I spent an evening with Jimmy, he talked me out of it. And we went to the bank instead. The business was 40 grand insolvent, and we were fortunate that this happened towards the end of 1990. If it had been the start, we'd have gone bust. Yeah. But the government had been putting a lot of pressure on the banks to stop them taking SMEs under.
Right,
so quickly,
into the sector.
Give them a chance before you take them down. And so we came at the end of the year. So they were much more... Plus, we were pretty honest and open with the bank all the way along when all this was going on. But they basically said, OK, you owe us 40 grand. You're 40 grand insolvent. So we'll live with 20 of that, but you've got to raise 20.
OK.
Well, they might have asked me for 20 million.
I had nothing.
I had no equity in the house. I did not have two halfpennies to rub together. And Jim said, well, I'll lend it to you. We'll lend it. There were three guys, Jim Merritt, a guy called Richard Adams, who's a freelance copywriter and wrote for us for years and years and years, and a guy called Jim Chapman, Triangle Computers back in the day.
Jim was Jim's client that I used to work
for. There you are. Yeah. So funnily enough, I'm having a beer with him and Jim tomorrow night. So all these years later, 1990 this was. And the three of them lent me 20 grand. And I said, well, this is crazy. You won't get, we could go bust tomorrow. It's like monster risk, and they insisted. And anyway, so the bank asked to see me and my lawyer. And I said, well, we've raised the 20 grand. And they said, well, where'd you get it from? And I said, well, 3 guys are going to lend it to me. Okay, well, what interest rate are they going to charge? I said, well, they don't want any interest. It's just
it's a mate's
okay, well, what's the repayment term? Well, there is no term. It's just when I can. So the bank aren't believing this. They actually had to sign a document to say that all this was true. The bank wouldn't believe it. And in the end, the bank struck a deal with us saying that for every £1 I paid them back, I had to pay the bank a £1 back too. So as I didn't just give them the 20 back and then run off.
And they leave them hanging. I hope they're still buying those guys the beers.
Absolutely. That's proper friends, isn't it?
It is. And we all need those in business at times.
Do.
Whether it's financial support, emotional support.
Yeah.
That sounding board. I think if you exist in business and run a business for the years that you have, and even I have, if you haven't got those people around you, it's a very lonely place.
Absolutely, yeah. You need the support. And if you think you can do it on your own without any support from anyone, you're fooling yourself. You know, whether that's emotional support, whether it's financial support, whether it's physical support, whatever it might be. That's a really important part of it. And that was an extraordinary time. So that was the closest the business ever came to going under. And I'm very proud that we didn't. We paid every penny back. Not one of our suppliers lost a penny.
Brilliant.
So it took us a while, a couple of years, but then as we went on through the 90s, and the learning and experience from that changed entirely the way the business operated.
Yeah.
I wrote a new business plan, Warren, and that business plan, which obviously iterated, once every 6 months, I would try and rewrite the business plan. So it would, as you well know, and I'm sure...
You don't just write one plan.
No, I'm sure you've told 100 clients this down the years. A business plan is not a thing you write and put in a drawer. It's a living, breathing thing.
It's got to be fluid, isn't it?
And I can still remember, and as far as I know, what I'll ever have done with that business plan is probably in the bin now, I guess. But certainly up until the time it was sold in 2015, completed 2016, that first paragraph was still the same. So this is the original business plan that was written in 1992 on the advice of a consultant that came in at the time. The first paragraph said, I'll probably paraphrase a little bit, but close to this. The agency is over-reliant on the residential building sector and must seek to diversify its client base to reduce its risk at times of market insecurity. And I think that paragraph is still in it. It was certainly still in it in 2016. But, we became in the end, certainly if you look at us as Space and Time, Whistle and Aylesworth Fleming between us, we were in the top 2 or 3 property marketing agencies in the UK. There's no question about that. And still today, we have an enviable reputation at doing that thing. Definitely. It's find something you do really, really well and then do it really, really well, and the world will be a path to your door, won't it?
Definitely. When you then go through that whole journey and you get to 2008-9, I just have to ask, how did you then, older, wiser, how did you dust? Because having had been, those scars from 1989-90, how did you find the resilience to dust yourself down and go again?
In a funny way, it probably curtailed the growth of the business a little bit, because one of the things, mantra I set myself after the experience in 1990, when it came that close, for 3 guys being extraordinarily stupid, lending me that money, but for that, we'd have gone. And I thought, I'm never going to have a debt issue again.
Yeah.
So, we can build a business here that's cash generative. Okay, we do want to expand, we do want to acquire, but never to a position where I have to rely on the banks again.
Okay.
So when 2008 happened, although Aylesworth Fleming got hit really hard, we never ever dropped below 7 figures in our bank account, cash surplus. And we had Space and Time, which was a brilliant business being run by Peter Jones, who is a genius and negotiator and stuff. And he did deals with everybody in the sector. The house building sector lost all their credit insurance, like overnight. So all the insurers just, our biggest account back in the day, Taylor Wimpey, who I think share price hit 4p at one point, during that period. Every builder had their credit insurance taken away, so they couldn't do any business. And Peter did an incredible deal with the media owners, saying, look, we can't deal with these people because they haven't got insurance. That means we're not going to be buying your media space. That means you don't have a business. So why don't we between us agree how we're going to manage this? We can't take that risk on. It's too great.
Yeah.
So why don't we share this risk a bit? Okay. And he did.
He redefined the model of the business.
Unbelievable.
The industry,
yeah, incredible. And so we were in a position to still be able to trade in media space and radio airtime, TV airtime during that time with developers, and really just, the business.
That's what it is.
So as Aylesworth Fleming fell and stumbled during that incredibly difficult time, Space and Time was still profitable all throughout that. It never ever slipped into a loss, And so we were cash positive, and we had one of the businesses in the group that was actually trading very well. Yeah. So we're a very different place.
Okay.
And so we're never under threat from lenders or.
Yeah, so it was a different experience, different place, different kind of life,
different
lessons learned,
different experiences, and the way we managed the whole thing was completely different.
It's interesting, isn't it? Because it's those important lessons we learn along the way.
Yeah.
That do we when lightning strikes twice, do we heed those lessons?
Yeah. I'm thinking about that, and I think you need to be careful because the last thing in the world I would do is counsel all SME. Startups or SME businesses to run debt free. I think I made a mistake, quite honestly, in doing that, because if you take away all of, as the business got bigger and and got strongly cash positive, that's slightly different. But I think it undermines some potential investment decisions I could have made if I'd have had an appetite to borrow wisely and constructively, and carefully. Prudently is probably a better word, with a really rock solid business plan. So you planned out what you're borrowing and why you're borrowing it. It's genuine, adding value to the business. So I'm not counselling that
you should be debt free.
You should be debt free
because leveraging is a big part of being in business.
Of course it is, and for a lot of businesses that's really important. Yeah. And but for me, the experience in 1990 was so close to losing everything: house, business, job, car, everything.
Yeah.
Within like the whim of a manager at, I think it was Barclays back in those days, but literally of a bank manager.
Yeah.
One and his boss probably on one day. Yeah. That's how close you came. So that's pretty tricky.
So, how did it feel in 2018 when you did it? We talked about the methodology of exit and why that happened, and it's good advice for anybody listening to think about, what is my true exit methodology, and is this some of the parts worth more than the whole, and all of that kind of thing. But how did it feel when you finally got the last of those deals?
Well, the last of the deals was done all of the major deals were done in 2016, completed in 2016. Thinking Juice, I think, completed in 2017. I left the business in 2018 because the deal I'd done with Oliver was that I would do 2 years. So even after we'd sold and legally completed on the whole sale of Aylesworth Fleming to Oliver, that I'd do 2 years while we found a new CEO and stuff. So I did those 2 years. It was great 2 years as well, by the way. And the business did really well during those 2 years. So, and I had a ratchet in place, which was actually made
rewarding.
Better still, yeah absolutely. And they gave me the most amazing send off. They were just awesome. They did it all, paid for it all, hired the Sandbanks Hotel, and got all my friends and clients from years and years back. The guys in the agency did a "This Is Your Life" thing. It was great. It was great. So I went away really happy, and I went home and thought, right, what am I going to do now then? And I do play golf. I'm not quite so keen on it these days as I used to be, but the thought of playing golf every day was just anathema to me. I was a consultant, so I got a fair bit of consultancy work, quite a substantial amount, particularly in the early days. But I missed the deadlines. I missed the problems. I missed the phone calls saying, what we're going to do about this. This has happened. What are we going to do? I missed all that. And I thought,
the energy, the buzz.
I'm way too young to be doing this, to be packing in. I mean, that's just ridiculous.
Yeah.
So at one point, I tried to buy the business back.
Okay. Might have been an interesting conversation.
That was an interesting conversation. The guy, Simon Martin, who is a genius, the guy that owned Oliver, and he sold Oliver for a very substantial sum to Brandtech Group, but he owned Oliver when it bought AF. And Sharon Whale, his brilliant, well, she's now global CEO, but she's awesome as well. And so I went up to London to meet the pair of them. Didn't tell them what it was I'm coming up for. So Simon wasn't there in person because he travels the world, but he was there on screen and Sharon was there in person. I said, I want to buy the business back. And Sharon said to Simon's picture on the screen, I told you he was going to say that. Have you ever heard of the term, now you're a clever guy and you involve yourself in this, have you ever heard of the term equity arbitrage?
No.
Nor had I. And Simon Martin said to me, Matt, have you ever heard of the term equity arbitrage? No. And apparently it is where you bring pieces of equity into a group, and in such a way it's like an arbitrage of ranking equity in the group that actually comes up, it increases in value every time you do a deal. So I sold to them at the multiple that I did, which is what I tried to buy it back at.
I'd call it ratcheting. Yeah, they buy it 8 times. They can then add it to theirs, sell it at 10. Yeah.
So it's just a different, exactly what you've just said. What you just said. So he said, when we sold you, we valued you at 10 times earnings. So I said, yeah, okay, I'm probably not going to be paying that for it. He said, wait, it gets worse. He said, in the big world of brand tech, he said, you sit at 30 times earning. Okay, I'll get my coat then, shall I?
Can I have a job?
And, well, it was then he said, look, so I can't, the sell is not an option. But why don't you come back? So I said, why on earth would I do that? And he said, well, your heart is obviously still in it.
Yeah.
He said, I'm going to make you an offer you can't refuse. So they gave me the very delicious ornamental title of executive chairman, which is absolute nonsense. There is a brilliant woman called Rachel Asquith, who's MD of Oliver. Yeah. She's based down locally, but she essentially runs Oliver with a great team around her.
Yeah.
Who are, it's a much flatter structure. We've got some great people at the top of that business, and they run the business. They allow me to come in every now and again.
Yeah.
And if anybody asks me anything about digital media, they jump in and help quickly, or social media. So it's great. That works very well. I'm no fool. I know where my strengths are. That's in relationships and stuff, and I'm quite good with the.
You're playing to your strengths. Market. You're enjoying it.
Yeah.
It has longevity in it.
Yeah. I love to see them doing well.
And does it feel weird to be in the business and not an owner?
It did at
after
first.
All of those years.
If I'm going to be honest, it did at first. It was difficult first, but now I'm used to it. And now I don't have any issue with it. And,
okay.
I've got to get my expenses signed off, and so where's the receipts? So back in the day, I used to do all that sort of stuff, and just do things on a whim. That obviously I need to get permission to do stuff now and stuff. And and at first it was tricky, but it's amazing how quickly, especially when you've got somebody so capable who's actually doing it,
running the business that you respect doing it, and you feel, I suppose, you've got financial security outside of that environment, so you're there because you've got that heart, that passion in the industry and for the relationships. I suppose you're there for a different reason, aren't you?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's great to see it. It's such a good business, and there's such good people there, and and I love them personally as well. They're these are people that I'm personally very fond of.
As we start to draw a kind of conversation to a close, I'd like to just explore, if you reflect on your own personal life, what do you think the effect on you personally, your family, those around you has been of you being so, I'm going to use the term entrepreneurial, but running your own business and being so committed to it?
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? And I think, my elder children who, well, one's in his 40s and the other one is just about to be, literally next month. She won't thank me for telling the world that, that's for sure. But so I've got an older, kids in 40 and 43, his son's going to be this year. And I've got a little one who's just coming up 21 next month, who's at university in London. And I think to the time that I had with my older kids when it was 7 days a week, and you wouldn't leave the office till 10 o'clock at night, particularly after times like 1990, where you had to get rid of everybody and do everything.
Yeah, you were back to
because there's literally costs down to zero and rebuild from scratch. And I regret that. And they're lovely, my kids. I'm very lucky that I don't feel that they begrudge that. No. I feel they always speak very positively about the business. I think they're very proud that the business is there. They both have at some point worked for the business and enjoyed it when they did, and led on to great things that they're doing in their own life now. That time that you miss, you can never get that back.
Can't claw it back.
Yeah, so there's an element of regret in that, but equally, it means you can build great things and do good stuff, and and enjoy the fruits and the benefits of that then a little bit further on in life.
Yeah, definitely. Good. And my final question I always ask people as we conclude is, with everything you've been through, everything you've learned, the highs, the lows, what's your definition of personal success, Matt?
There's a couple. Okay, so shooting sub 60 nets in a competition at Ferndown, all right, that's personal success. That's
right, so the golf is in there.
Yeah. So it was much more important to me back then. Your football team winning away at Liverpool.
Yeah, well, I'm a Bournemouth supporter. I took my two girls to their first away game and we lost 9-0. So that would have been a personal achievement. I'll go with that one.
Well, my team played at Bournemouth a couple of weeks ago and I was invited there for the evening. A great mate of mine, David Errington of Go2Be, invited me there for the evening because they're regular sponsors. Yeah. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to make it to see us get beaten 1-0. So, football is still Crystal Palace is still a really big part of my life, and
the London boy at heart.
I've been a supporter for 60 years, and you can't take that away. But personal success for me is a happy family, it's all about how you feel, isn't it, and about life and stuff. And one of my favourite things to do in the whole world is to laugh. And for people that know me well, I love that. When you're in a place that you can laugh freely with great friends and with family and stuff, that's personal success.
That's great.
The ability to be able to do that and do what you want to do on that basis.
Thank you, Matt. I've really enjoyed our conversation. I've had fun in terms of our conversation. I've loved your energy. It's been great to hear more about your story and learn more about you. So thank you for your time.
It's flown past. I'm flattered to be asked, Warren, and I've really enjoyed doing it. I can't believe how quickly it's flown past.
Brilliant. And if people want to know more about you or more about AF Oliver, where can they go?
Well, so AF Oliver, the best place is the website. For me, LinkedIn is always a great place to start. Brilliant. And I live a lot of my life on LinkedIn. So social media, I'm not great. I am on Instagram, or you're supposed to call it Insta, aren't you? Yeah. I am on Insta, but I'm much more at home. I dip into Twitter, and I find it horrifying how people are so ready to attack each other, and it just strikes me that on LinkedIn people are just nicer people. It seems to me, and Radio Wimborne. So that's the other quick plug then for the radio station. I'm presenting the breakfast show on Radio Wimborne twice a week, 7 a.m. to 9 a.m. Brilliant. Wednesdays and Fridays. So listen in, be there or be square.
Brilliant. Thank you for being a great guest on the podcast.
Absolute pleasure, Warren. Absolute pleasure.
I really hope you've enjoyed that conversation as much as I did. So if you have enjoyed the episode and want to learn more about Evolve, then please do go to evolveadvisory.co.uk. There you can find out about how we do really help businesses start, grow and exit. And of course, what we'd really like you to do is to subscribe and review this podcast on whatever your favourite channel is. So that's it for now. Thank you for listening, and please join us in 2 weeks' time for the next episode of the Evolve to Succeed podcast.